The city of Westbridge had always been a place of contradictions. By day, its streets buzzed with energy, coffee shops filled with college students tapping away at laptops, office workers rushing in and out of tall glass buildings, and families enjoying their daily routines in suburban neighborhoods. But beneath the surface, there was tension, a simmering anger that had been building for months, if not years. The tension first began with an incident that quickly spiraled into something much larger. A video had gone viral, spreading like wildfire across social media. It showed a confrontation between police officers and a young man on the corner of Maple Avenue. The clip was short, blurry, and open to interpretation, but the image of force, of authority clashing with vulnerability, struck a nerve across the city. Protests began the next day. At first, they were peaceful. Crowds gathered in the central square, holding signs that read "Justice now and no more silence." Families marched with children sitting on their shoulders. Clergy members stood alongside students, teachers, and workers. The atmosphere was passionate but hopeful, voices raised not only in anger but in the belief that change could come if enough people stood together. But as the weeks stretched on, frustration deepened. Promises from city leaders felt hollow. Official statements were filled with cautious language, sidestepping accountability. Meetings between activists and government officials ended with little progress. Slowly, the marches grew louder. Graffiti started appearing on the walls, angry messages scrawled in spray paint, sometimes hopeful slogans, sometimes raw rage. And then came the night when everything shifted. The gathering storm. It was a Friday evening in late November. The air carried the bite of winter, crisp and cold, the kind of night when smoke lingered in the air longer than usual. By sunset, crowds had already begun forming downtown. Some carried signs, others carried cell phones ready to livestream what was about to unfold. Among the crowd was Maya Torres, a 24-year-old community organizer who had been at the forefront of the protests since the beginning. Maya had grown up in Westbridge, the daughter of immigrants who had worked long hours in factories and diners to give her a better future. She was smart, outspoken, and unafraid to stand up to authority. For Maya, this fight was personal. She remembered walking home from school as a teenager and seeing her older brother stopped by police for no reason other than the way he looked. She remembered the humiliation in his eyes, the way her family whispered about it at dinner but never spoke too loudly for fear of being judged. This movement was not just about one incident, it was about every incident. On the other side of the city, another figure was preparing for the night. Officer Daniel Riley, a 10-year veteran of the Westbridge Police Department, stood in the locker room of precinct headquarters, pulling on his riot gear piece by piece. He strapped on his heavy boots, tightened the Velcro on his protective vest, and adjusted the helmet that always felt slightly too tight around his temples. Daniel was not new to protests. He had stood in lines like this before, shield in one hand, baton in the other, listening to chants echo through the streets. But something about tonight felt different. The intelligence reports said the crowd could swell into thousands, and there were rumors, anonymous posts online, that some intended to provoke chaos. He wasn't sure how much of that was true, but he had learned long ago that preparation was survival. Flames in the night. By 8 p.m., the protest had swelled into a sea of people. The square was filled shoulder to shoulder, chants reverberating off the stone walls of old municipal buildings. No justice, no peace. The crowd roared in unison. Cell phone lights flickered in the night like stars, recording every moment for the world to see. Maya stood near the front, her scarf pulled tight against the cold, her voice hoarse from hours of chanting. She felt the electricity in the air, anger, frustration, but also unity. Around her, strangers had become allies, linked together by a shared cause. But as the chants grew louder, another sound began to cut through the air, the distant echo of boots against pavement, the steady rhythm of a formation approaching. The police line emerged from the shadows, glowing under the orange haze of streetlights. Dozens of officers marched in lockstep, their reflective vests catching the light, their clear plastic shields raised like walls. Behind them, a larger force waited, ready to advance if needed. Daniel was among them, his breath fogging the inside of his helmet visor. He could feel the heat of the crowd's anger pressing against him like a wave. He adjusted his grip on the shield, his knuckles pale from tension. Then it happened. A single bottle flew through the air, shattering against the pavement near the officers. The sound was sharp, electric, like the crack of thunder. The crowd roared, some in shock, some in excitement, some in fear. A line had been crossed. Soon, more objects followed. Rocks, bottles, shouts turned into screams. The once united crowd began to fracture, some pulling back in fear, others surging forward in defiance. And then, from somewhere in the chaos, a fire ignited. A trash bin overturned, flames licking upward into the night. The glow spread quickly, reflecting off the shields of the police, illuminating the rage etched into the faces of protesters. Maya's heart raced as she watched the fire grow. She hadn't come here for violence, she wanted justice, not destruction. But the momentum was no longer hers to control. Daniel felt his stomach knot. The flames painted everything in a hellish glow. His training kicked in: hold the line, protect your fellow officers, don't let the crowd break through. But inside, he wondered, how did it come to this? The standoff. For what felt like hours, the two sides stared at each other through smoke and fire. The air was filled with chants, coughs, and the distant crackling of flames. Protesters banged on signs, police shields clanged together, and the tension twisted tighter with every passing minute. Maya stood in the front, her fists clenched, her eyes locked on the wall of officers. Somewhere deep inside, she still believed there was a way back, that words could matter, that reason could prevail. She wanted to shout, to plead with them, see us, hear us, don't turn us into enemies. But across from her, Daniel tightened his grip on his baton. His orders were clear: if the line was breached, they would advance. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he knew the cost of hesitation. Behind his shield, he searched the faces of the crowd, and for a moment, he thought he saw the fear in their eyes mirror his own. The city of Westbridge was on the edge, teetering between protest and riot, between hope and despair. And in that moment, with fire lighting up the night sky, neither side knew which way it would fall. The first flames had been small, just a trash bin burning, a flicker in the cold night air. But by midnight, the fire had grown into something monstrous. Storefront windows shattered, and smoke curled upward into the black sky. The once proud streets of Westbridge looked like a war zone. For the people gathered, it no longer felt like a protest, it felt like survival. Breaking point. Maya Torres had lost track of time. Her throat was raw from chanting and screaming. Her hands trembled from both the cold and the adrenaline surging through her veins. She wanted to hold the line, to stand firm in peaceful defiance, but the chaos around her kept pulling her deeper into the storm. She had come with friends, but in the crush of the crowd, she was separated. Around her, she saw strangers, faces twisted by anger, by fear, by desperation. Some still raised their signs high above the chaos, determined to stay true to their message. Others hurled objects at the police line, their rage overwhelming any thought of consequence. When the first Molotov cocktail arced through the night and exploded against the pavement, Maya's stomach dropped. The fireball painted the officers' shields in orange and red, their silhouettes looking less like protectors and more like shadows from a nightmare. On the other side of the riot shield, Officer Daniel Riley flinched at the explosion. The blast sent heat rushing over his face, even through the visor. He felt the rumble in his chest, the vibration through his boots. He looked left and right. His brothers and sisters in uniform stood shoulder to shoulder, shields locked, but he could see the same fear in their eyes that burned in his own. The command crackled through his radio: hold the line. Do not break formation. But the line was shaking. And so was the city. The clash. The protesters surged. Some pushed against the shields with their bare hands, others used sticks or boards ripped from construction sites. The officers dug in their heels, bracing against the pressure. For a brief, terrible moment, it was pure chaos, flesh and plastic, shouts and screams colliding in the smoke and fire. Maya was shoved forward, nearly tripping over debris. She slammed into the wall of shields and for the first time looked directly into the eyes of the officer behind it. She couldn't see his face clearly through the visor, but she could see the humanity in his gaze, tired, frightened, conflicted. It was Daniel. For a heartbeat, the noise of the world faded. The chants, the crackling fire, the screams, they were all muffled by the silent connection of two people caught on opposite sides of history. But then reality snapped back. A baton swung just inches from Maya as officers pushed forward. The crowd screamed in panic, some rushing backward, others throwing themselves harder against the line. Maya stumbled, coughing as smoke filled her lungs. Daniel held his shield firm, but his mind raced. He didn't want this. None of this. But every second, the clash grew more violent. He heard the cries of protesters, the orders of his sergeant, the pounding of his own heartbeat. Dash dash dash. Fire consumes. By 1 a.m., Westbridge was burning. Cars overturned and lit like torches. Windows shattered in waves of glass. Alarms wailed from abandoned shops. The fire brigade tried to push through but were blocked by the chaos in the streets. The police advanced block by block, shields raised, dispersing crowds with tear gas and batons. Each push scattered the protesters, but they regrouped again and again, driven by a mix of rage and desperation. Maya found herself in an alley, gasping for breath, her scarf soaked with tears and smoke. Her phone buzzed endlessly, messages from friends asking if she was safe, livestream notifications from around the city, each showing another pocket of chaos. For the first time that night, she felt small. Not a leader, not an organizer, just a young woman caught in the firestorm of history. Still, she couldn't leave. She stepped back into the street, determined to bear witness, even if she couldn't stop what was unfolding. Daniel, too, was reaching his breaking point. His arms ached from holding the shield. His ears rang from explosions. His throat burned from smoke. He had joined the force to protect, to serve, but tonight, all he felt was the widening gap between himself and the very people he had sworn to protect. Dash dash dash. The human moment. It was near 2 a.m. when Maya and Daniel crossed paths again. The crowd had thinned in one part of downtown, leaving smoldering fires and scattered debris. Maya stumbled into the open street, exhausted. Daniel and a small squad advanced cautiously, shields lowered slightly now that the crowd had dispersed. Their eyes met again, not through glass this time, but in the flickering firelight of a burning car nearby. "Go home," Daniel said hoarsely, lifting his visor. His voice was ragged but firm. "It's not safe here." Maya swallowed hard, her throat raw. "This is my home," she replied. "And it hasn't been safe for a long time." For a moment, neither moved. The silence between them was louder than the chaos that had filled the night. Two people, enemies by circumstance, bound by fear, by hope, by the tragedy unfolding around them. Then the radio on Daniel's shoulder barked another command: "Advance to 9th Street. Clear the block." He hesitated, then lowered his visor. The moment was gone. The machine of the night churned forward. Dash dash dash. Dawn. By sunrise, the fires still smoldered. Streets were littered with glass, ash, and broken dreams. The city felt hollow, as though it had exhaled all its rage into the night and was left only with silence. Maya sat on the curb, her body aching, her voice gone. She watched as the sun painted the sky pink and gold, colors that felt too beautiful for a city that had just torn itself apart. Across town, Daniel sat in the locker room, peeling off his riot gear piece by piece. His uniform was scorched and stained. His hands shook as he unlaced his boots. For the first time in years, he questioned everything: the badge, the shield, the system he was part of. Neither of them had won. Dash dash dash. Aftermath. In the days that followed, the headlines told the story in fragments. Westbridge burns. Protests turn violent. City calls for unity amid chaos. Politicians gave speeches, committees were formed, and promises were made. But Maya knew the story was not in the headlines. It was in the faces of the people who had marched beside her, in the scars left on the city, in the silence that followed every siren. And Daniel knew it too. He carried the weight of that night in his chest, the memory of fire in the streets, and the look in a young woman's eyes when she said, "This is my home." Dash dash dash. Closing reflection. The story of Westbridge was not unique. Cities across America had faced similar nights, nights where hope and anger collided, where peace gave way to fire, where human beings were forced to see each other not as neighbors but as enemies. But in every fire, there is light. And sometimes, in the silence that follows, there is the chance to rebuild, not just streets and buildings, but trust, dignity, and justice. For Maya, the fight continued. For Daniel, the questions lingered. For Westbridge,